Brothers and sisters, we seek protection, safety, and the true guardianship. Safety from the evil of this world, the evil of Iblis, and all of the devils from his allies from jinns and humanity. We seek safety in absolute mercy, absolute compassion, the perfection of grace, that which Allah represents to all of us if we seek it. We praise Him in abundant praise. We live a life of thanks and gratitude, seeking His favor. And we ask Him to send His peace and blessings and mercy on Prophet Muhammad and all of those who follow him until the day of judgment. Pain, suffering, human loss, tragedy, these are all unescapable, undeniable realities of life as we know it. Modern atheism is established on some sort of mockery of God as we know Him. They say if God is good and merciful, and He's also all-powerful, He can make things however He wants, then why does He cause severe pain and suffering to innocent people? This argument treats God as some sort of illogical, oppressive being with superpowers. Due to the unfortunate reality that atheists actually do not and cannot believe in objective morality or objective truth, in a notion of the purpose of life, they create a straw man argument. They create a separate being than the one we know, that we believe in, that they don't believe in order to argue against belief. And so they're defending their disbelief in something they don't know about, which in and of itself is illogical, irrational, and unscientific. Let's take a look at the profound lesson in the turning of events, the turning point in the life of one of our profound leaders and scholars in our history. About 1,000 years ago, there was a great teacher, a scholar, Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. A lot of people don't know that there was a drastic shift in his life. He was blessed with acumen. He was raised in a knowledgeable environment with great teachers. And so he became a lauded, respected scholar. And so he used to teach. And the authorities would take care of him. He actually became quite wealthy with prestige. Everywhere he walked, they were all in awe of the great al-Ghazali in Baghdad. So he had it all. But through his teaching and his knowledge of all the sciences, he found himself feeling like he's not really embracing spirituality. He found himself that he's starting to allow all this to get to him, where he's seeing himself as something important. So he felt this unsettling urge to kind of detract and move away from society to try to move closer to God. And he was having a hard time committing to that until one day he came to actually teach a class. And something happened where he felt a lock on his tongue, meaning he was mute. He was trying to talk, but he just simply could not talk. And he was not able to talk, and it started to really bother him, and he started to kind of freak out, so he left. And over a period of weeks, he became very depressed, his physical health, because he wasn't able to talk. And he started to get really concerned. And so one day he said, you know what, I'm going to embark on a journey, and I'm going to study, and I'm going to remember Allah in my heart and mind, and I'm going to serve people in need where they don't know me and who I am. And so he went away and he did that. And so what that led to is he began to write the book Ihya Ulum ad-Din, which is a 4-volume masterpiece that is seen as probably one of the most influential books in Islamic history, the revival of the Islamic sciences. And so then he found himself able to talk again and to teach again. But he had refined his spiritual inner reality. And so was that hardship, that pain, that suffering, was that a catalyst for him becoming such a profound leader in our history? The prophetic biography, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we look at the life of Prophet Muhammad, he was living very comfortably. Even though he was an orphan, which is tough to deal with, his grandfather and his uncle took him under their wing. And they made it adamant because he was a good kid and he grew up to be a good person. Then he married Khadija, a very wealthy, noble woman. And he was very comfortable until he received this message and he began to communicate it. And then we read 23 years of pain and suffering and rejection and abuse and humiliation and the need to now go fight people in a battlefield to just live as a believer. And we see that's a whole seerah. And then after that, Muslims were very stable and their community was amazing. It was one of the greatest, if not the greatest, civilizations ever recorded in human history. My own experience, I was 15 years old, about 15 and a half, and my sister was engaged in some behavior she shouldn't have, and she asked me to drive. I had been driving with her of my permit in like the neighborhoods and the basic streets, so then her and her boyfriend told me to jump on the highway. I have never driven on a highway. And she has an old Subaru that has kind of a loose driving. So as we're getting up 50, 60, something happened where I started finding like it's hard to control, and the car spun out, and all I remember is being in the ICU after that. It was a profound moment in the beginning of a spiritual journey for me there. But the ways of the world got to me, and I did not take it seriously. So after getting kicked out of 2 high schools after that, and having to move away from Tulsa, Oklahoma to Oklahoma City, after that, I turned 18 and I found myself in the wrong house, and the door got kicked in. We were all arrested, and I was sitting in a jail. And so I started praying to God there. And then after that, I took it seriously, and so I became Muslim about 6 months later. And so if I didn't go through those pain and those suffering, would I be here today? How would my life be? You see, it's something that you have to pay attention to outside of the entitlement of the I and the I want and I deserve and I should have and this should be the way I want it to be. Sounds familiar. We call him Iblis. That's his operation methodology. So the atheist mode is using Iblis methodology to deny God, and it's not surprising. You see what I'm saying? So there's this beautiful documentary called I Am. You should definitely watch it. And it's basically the story of the amazing transformation of director Tom Shadyac. Tom Shadyac, he graduated from film school, and he saw this weird white comedian guy named Jim Carrey on a show called In Living Color, which was basically like the Black Saturday Night Live in the early 90s. And so he saw this one white guy. There's only one white guy on the whole thing, but he was just crazy wild and everything. So he's like, I want to go meet that guy. I figure we can do stuff. And he basically produced and directed all of Jim Carrey's movies. And he became a multi-millionaire. He had hundreds of millions, houses here, houses there, private jet. He had everything. One day, he was in the mountains of somewhere, Utah, California, whatever it is, and he had his mountain bike and all of his gear and everything, and he had a terrible crash. And he had a massive concussion. He went to the hospital. He spent weeks and months in the hospital, and they couldn't solve the migraine headaches, even the codeine, even the morphine, the pulsating thing behind his eye. And so somebody introduced him to, meditation and spirituality, and he said, you know what, I'm just going to go find a place where I can just build a small hut by the ocean, and I'm just going to detach myself from the fast lane of life. And this is back in the middle of like the Iraq war and all that. So he turned on the TV in the hospital bed and seen all this death and destruction and chaos and hatred, and he was like, I just don't want to have nothing to do with any of that. And so then he went over there, and you should watch the documentary how he became a very spiritual person, and guess what he did? He donated all of his millions away to good causes. It's a real story. And now he's a person that just has whatever he needs, and he works on projects to serve people, and he makes good but beneficial documentaries about good life practices and so forth. So he had to go through that suffering and that pain to realize the actual purpose of life. Maybe he didn't realize full prophethood. May Allah guide him, and may our community get to the audacity and courage to bring the clarity of where that thing that he reached, that fitrah that he's starting to embrace, what's the full story of that? So dealing with suffering is a key part of realizing our ultimate value as human beings. And it is a test from God. أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do people think that they'll just be like, I'm a believer and I'm Muslim, everything will go right for me in my life and I'll just have like Jannah on earth? Then what's the point of your life as a believer if you're just going to have heaven? And then what is the point of earning your place in heaven? So a couple ayahs later, مَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّ أَجَلَ اللَّهِ لَآتٍ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Whoever is hoping to meet God, whoever sees that death is coming, know that it is. Every moment of every day, death is coming for each and every one of us. We're always getting closer to death, and we will meet God who gave us our life, and we will be held accountable, and we will be judged. And so He is Sami' and He is Alim. He hears our prayers, and He knows our situation and what we do and how we choose to live, and we will be held accountable. So suffering and hardship serve an important purpose. It calls human beings living in an imperfect body in an imperfect world to heed the call of God and strive to become closer to Him, closer to perfection, to the eternal union with Him in paradise. We don't own our bodies. It's not my body, my rights. We don't believe in that. لِلَّهِ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. God owns everything in the heavens and the earth, and He makes the laws of how everything in the heavens and the earth, including our bodies, should be operated and run. And so we are not in a place of ultimate comfort. We're in a place of flux and defects and shortcomings. Part of the problem with atheism is the assumption of human entitlement that only knows a world of physical limitations. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. The believers, the people who realize the nature of this world and its reality and what will come, they say, when they're afflicted with a hardship, when they're suffering through difficulty, they say, we are God's property. We belong to God, and we are returning to Him. That's what we're doing here. We're returning back to Him. We came from Him. We are His property, and we're returning Him. That's who we are, what we are, and that's what we're doing. So pain and suffering are blessings to remind us that we are not at home, and that we must seek the means to get to our home, a destination that can only be known through the roadmap, through the guidance of the creator of that roadmap, Al-Hadi, the guide. God offered this blessing and responsibility of freedom and individual choice and independent free will to all of creation. And the Quran tells us that the unique human being said, I want this responsibility. So we have to choose to deal with suffering by taking active measures to try to avoid it anytime we can. It's not like we, as Muslims, we're like, we should just suffer. No. We try to avoid it, but we know we're not meant to avoid all of it. It will come to us. And so then we try to alleviate it from ourselves and others. How? Through spiritual reconciliation and wholeness. That is how you overcome material suffering, through spiritual empowerment and guidance. And so we try to alleviate it from ourselves, but more importantly, we're on a mission when we're comfortable, when we have everything we need, when we have good health and good wealth. We're trying to find who among humanity in my environment is suffering. How can I make their life better? That's part of the deal, is that He's calling people to fulfill their selfless, divine, merciful, compassionate purpose in doing God's work by letting people suffer so that we can be Him in the work that we do. That we can be the divine measure of guidance and fulfill the will of God in the world. So the ultimate purpose of life is to embrace God as the ultimate truth. The truth of where we came from, what we're doing here, and where we're going. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فإنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Wisdom, knowledge applied properly, it necessitates that there are more than one decision that you could make in dealing with reality. Some have more beneficial consequences than others, even if the immediate reality is difficult or hard or even painful. So true meaning and purpose are derived through appreciating contrasting experiences. There must be suffering, hardship, pain, corruption, and evil for there to be happiness, comfort, beauty, and good. You would not know one without the other. There are three forms of awakenings we have in life. There are the awakenings of the blessings that we have. Gratitude. I'm blessed. I have things that I don't necessarily deserve. Our misdeeds, our crimes, our corruptions, things I do that cause others harm. And the recognition of the passage of time and our responsibility in it. So suffering and illness force us to awaken to all three of these. It is the ultimate spiritual energizer, suffering and pain. It's like, oh, I was having blessings and I became complacent and I took them for granted. And now I'm going through hardship. You know, I've done many things. Maybe I deserve this. I've done many misdeeds. I've done people wrong. Maybe I'm being purified and my sins are being removed from me. Alhamdulillah, this is good stuff. I'm glad I'm going through this right now. And time is going. So am I taking life seriously? Am I really actually living the way I should be? So it forces us to slow down, reevaluate, re-examine what we're doing. And this pause represents blessings that we have taken for granted that we realize. We realize, okay, what am I doing here? What's my point? We recognize that the end of life is coming. We see suffering. We see the end of life. Like, that could happen to me. Am I ready for that? Have I honestly taken my spiritual realm as my priority in life? Or have I become content with physical needs and interests? Healing, it's when we become whole again. Healing is when we're at peace with ourselves, at peace with reality and the world, at peace with God, at peace with the divine. Healing entails finding meaning and purpose that is bigger than ourselves, bigger than our own suffering. This is the meaning of the ayah, جَنَّاتُ عَدْنٍ يَدْخُلُونَهَا وَمَنْ صَلَحَ مِنْ آبَائِهِمْ وَأَزْوَاجِهِمْ وَذُرِّيَّاتِهِمْ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ يَدْخُلُونَ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ كُلِّ بَابٍ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِمَا صَبَرْتُمْ فَنِعْمَ عُقْبَى الدَّارِ. So the righteous and their family members who had wholesome healing attitudes and behaviors will enter into the paradise of bliss. They will be given a state of perfection. Then the angels will come to them and say, now you have true peace, lasting peace and comfort and ease that will never go away. You have earned that because you embraced reality throughout life, which we call patience and perseverance. So this massive earthquake in Morocco and this tragic, disastrous flood in Libya, it activates our spiritual focus in life. How can I help? How can I be the conduit of Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim? How can I be the mercy and the compassion for these people? So first and foremost, as we know, we must pray. Prayer is the most powerful thing. It is when people's hearts and intentions are inclining to the one who has absolute capacity to do anything. Do not belittle or demean prayer, and don't rely on others. It is a spiritual practice that the Prophet ﷺ's companions did. They would ask people to pray for them. But some Muslims feel like prayer is for sheikhs and imams and stuff. Like, can you pray for me? And I'm like, have you been praying for yourself? We don't have a hierarchical holy man thing. That's a Christian and Jewish mentality we've adopted. So we're all on the same path. Some may have more knowledge than others. Some may have more practice than others, but God knows. There is no specially ordained holy person that is the representative. Some misguided people kind of gave people this idea. We should all be praying for the victims of this flood. We ask Allah to alleviate them from their distress, to accept their dead as martyrs, to give them ease and comfort. We have to be people who recognize the power of our heart's content, our heart's commitment. And it's good to give some wealth. We shouldn't feel the burden to give all of our money to now we're putting ourselves in extreme hardship when this is going to take billions upon billions of dollars. We have to see the bigger picture about how we can actively support the needs of our brothers and sisters in a bigger scale. What is our influence in this land that is sending tens of billions of dollars to Ukraine to fight Russia? Why do they do that? You see what I'm saying? So why can't we get them to send tens of, whose money is it? It's our money. It's tax money, right? So if the 40% of our taxes go where? To the military. So how come we don't position ourselves, along with other people who think like us, to want to use that money instead of for fighting wars, to alleviating suffering in a real, substantial way? Do we believe we have no power?